Half a day, FLOSSTUBE.
I'm Little One.
And I'm Lynette here at Homesteading on the Home Front. It is Tuesday, March 6th, 2018 here in Guam. We would very much like to welcome all of our new subscribers. We have gotten at least a couple hundred more since the last time we saw you. So if you were here for the first time, or for the first video, I guess, since you've subscribed, welcome. Half a day is the local greeting here in Guam. So you will hear us saying that at the beginning of every video, and then we found half a day shirts. So we are matchy-matchy. Okay, let's get right into it. We've got a lot to talk about today. So we're gonna get right into FFOs. Your turn.
So we had a finishing weekend this weekend because I kept bugging Mom. And this is from the 1992 cross-stitch calendar of something. And it's supposed to look like our cat. And we have this green fabric on the back that matches the cat's bow. And it turned out really cute.
And I made the whole thing, right?
No.
Tell them what you did.
So she did like the first side, and then I did everything else.
On the sewing machine.
On the sewing machine. And then we stuffed it. She did a little bit, and then I did the rest by myself. And do I show the bottom?
The bottom's beautiful.
Yes, you have to take our word for it. She did a little bit, and then I did the rest.
She closed up the bottom. We may or may not add some chenille to it when we find some available.
And the next one is one that I'm doing with one of my friends. It's the Lizzie Kate Friendship Grows. There's this pretty fabric on the back that matches it perfectly.
She wanted it to be a pillow, but she also wanted to be able to hang it. So we added a temporary hanger with the safety pin. There's got to be a better way. We'll figure it out at some point.
Mom didn't really have any ribbon that perfectly matched it, so I just chose a bright color that looked pretty.
And what valuable lesson did you learn on that one when you were sewing it together?
I learned a lesson.
Yes, you did. You've forgotten it already? When you sew fabrics, what do you do with the right sides?
Oh yeah, you have to put the right sides together.
We learned that lesson. What other finishing did you get done?
So these were finished at the beginning of December in 2017. They were the fruits. We showed the watermelon. This is how the pineapple turned out.
What is it?
It's a needle minder. And the cherry is a needle minder as well, with this cute heart fabric on the back. It's kind of like a flat fold, except not the other part. And we added some of the fluffy stuff, and it turned out really cute.
So when we were finishing this, I had scraps of foam core board, so I used that. I should have used just mat board because it would have been thinner. So I found that with one magnet on the back, it still worked, but it wasn't quite as strong as I wanted it to be. So that's why there's two magnets here. But it's absolutely adorable.
And how did we make this needle minder?
So I found in my collection some make your own button covers, and so that's what we used on this one. We've got the paper on it, so the magnets, but basically you just insert. It's very easy, let's just put it that way. It was so easy that I ordered more because Joann's had a 50% off sale on sewing notions. So we will be making some more of our needle minders.
It was so easy, it probably only took us like a minute or two to make it.
In fact, I made one of my own too, and I forgot to bring it, but that's going to be gifted, so somebody will be receiving a homemade needle minder. That's it for your FFOs?
Yep.
Okay, my turn. So, I had a successful thrifting day and I found some frames. So the first one I found, I used to frame up this Jane Austen quote. I think I was doing this in like my second FLOSSTUBE video ever. It took me like a day, probably back in October, and I just never found the right frame for it, and so I was very pleased to find this one at the thrift store. This is a Sampler Girl pattern that Distracted Stitcher kindly enabled me to purchase. And then the second frame I found isn't my favorite one for this piece, but I really wanted this piece framed in the kitchen, and I wanted it in the kitchen and it needed to be framed to protect it. So this is Michael's Prayer from Silver Creek Samplers. Just recently, she's laughing. She's laughing at my ghetto finishing.
Duct tape fixes everything.
It's electrical tape. So anyway, I laced it, and it was too thick to fit, so that's what the black tape is for. But, you know, I've seen worse ghetto finishing. So anyway, yeah, she was nagging me about having a finishing weekend, and I said, if I help you finish things, you need to help me finish things. So she took care of cutting and separating the strands of floss so that I could lace this one up. So eventually I want to put this in a darker frame kind of to match the brown of the eagle, but it'll do for now. And then my final FFO is the one that I'm really enjoying. So I started it last video. It is Union Forever by Blackbird Designs. I'll just show it to you and then I'll talk about it. This is how it came out. This is not at all how I envisioned it would come out. I knew I wanted to do the design as charted, and then I knew I wanted to add the words in as a memorial to my third great grandfather who died in the Civil War. So my original intent was to do it to fit a 10 by 13 frame. And so I calculated everything. I had it in my head what I was going to do, and I started stitching, and I realized once again that the fabric I was using was labeled 32 count, but it was actually 28 count. And because of that, it threw off my math, and I wasn't going to be able to, I was going to do the design and then do the wording just at the bottom. So I knew I wasn't going to be able to do that. It wasn't going to fit in a standard size frame, nor did I have enough room on my fabric to do that. So I had to really think about what I was going to do, and I finally decided to stitch over one. It says, "Sacred to the memory of J.A. Klinsing, 159th New York Infantry Regiment, died 23rd of July, 1864, buried at sea." And down here it says, "Wrought by his third great-granddaughter LSL in the year 2018. So, I posted this on Facebook, I think in the Blackbird Designs site, but I realized after this piece was done that John Adam Klinsing was from a itty-bitty village called Philmont in the town of Claverick, New York. Neither of those places that I know of have a Civil War monument. And because he was buried at sea, it is very doubtful that there's actually a gravestone for him in the family plot. I'm hoping to get to the cemetery this summer and confirm that. But as of right now, chances are this piece that I'm holding is the only place that John Adam Klinsing's service and sacrifice have been acknowledged. So this is a really special piece to me. I also wanted to share with you, for those of you who are into genealogy or history or just like fascinating things, I had mentioned when I was working on Miss Baxter that I wanted to make her as a tribute to my third great grandmother, Margaret, who was John's wife. They, just to recap the story, they lost two of their sons about 6 weeks apart. Several years later, John Adam mustered for the Civil War. after he left, a few months after he left, my great-great-grandfather Frank was born. So John Adam never knew that son. And then he was killed. And so Margaret was left raising children. She did eventually remarry, and I was able to find her will in which she left 2 houses to one to my great-great-grandfather Frank and another to her daughter Fanny. But she gave her husband, her second husband, basically she gave him lifetime tenancy. So I just think it's fascinating that she owned the houses, and I can't wait to get back to New York this summer and do some more research to find out about that. But anyway, the problem with Miss Baxter was that I did not know Margaret's maiden name, and so I didn't want to make that a tribute piece until I found that piece of information. So while I was working on this, I decided to Google John Adam Klinsing, or I don't even think I Googled him. I think I Googled her name for some reason. And something came up at fold3.com, which is Ancestry's version. It's the military records. So I signed up for a free trial just to see what was there. And what ended up being there was a 30-page document from the Widow's Army Pension. And I have a copy right here. I'm going to read it to you. Basically, it says that Margaret Klinsing swears she is the widow of John Adam Klinsing, who was a private in Company D, commanded by Captain Slider in the 159th Regiment of the New York Volunteers, who died of chronic diarrhea on shipboard while being transported with his regiment from New Orleans to Bermuda Hundred on the 23rd day of July, 1864. Now, that was a piece of information that I didn't know. I knew that John Adam had been hospitalized in New Orleans, and I kind of assumed that he just died there. But that didn't answer why they buried him at sea. And so this tells me that he was actually better, and he was on his way to Bermuda Hundred, which is in Virginia. They changed the name of it since then, but he was on his way to Virginia, and he died on board. Then it goes on to say, she further declares that her maiden name was Margaret Colas, and that she was married to the said John Adam Klinsing on the 17th day of April, 1856 at Mellonville, which is part of Philmont. And so looking under the pension records, I was able to find her maiden name, which thrills me to no end. The problem is that they already had like 3 kids by the time they were officially married. So my first thought was that Colas was a married name. Maybe she had a husband before John Adam and those were his children. But the paperwork isn't bearing it out. Those kids, they used the name Klinsing their whole life. So yeah, something is fishy is going on there, but I'm going to look into it and be fascinated by it. But in the meantime, John Adam Klinsing has a memorial. And this is a piece that should never, ever, ever end up at the thrift store. Got it?
Got it.
All right. So again, that was Union Forever by Blackbird Designs. I also have some FOs. I'm gonna actually talk about them later on in the video. So we will then move on to whips.
Okay, so I started the part of Little House Needleworks, the library, that the one I'm doing this time is Western, and I'm changing it to historical since I don't read Westerns. And this is what I have so far. It's going by really fast. I'll admit that I got tired of my sampler and started this a few days early, but
It's making headway.
The sooner I get done with this, the sooner I can get back to my sampler. Speaking of my sampler, I did some more on that, and this is where I was when I got sick of it.
So what'd you do since we last saw them? You did the words?
I finished the border down here, and I did the work. It says JAL, her work, 2018, and I started this motif. So I'll probably be done with this month. No promises.
All right, show them your watermelons, because I forgot to go get my whip.
Okay. So I went down because I heard Mom sewing one day, and I was like, what are you doing? And she said that she was making project bags, and she had some fabric that she was going to make a project bag out of for me. And she asked me if I wanted it to be a surprise or if I wanted to know then. And I said I wanted to know then. So she made a watermelon project bag. It has green dots on the inside. And then a tiny one. And in it is a Little House Needleworks counted cross stitch watermelon. I got it for Christmas. It came a little late, but I'll forgive it. And this is the watermelon. We might actually change it into a needle minder so that we have a matching set. But that's my watermelons.
You got your watermelon fix.
Gee, what's my favorite fruit?
Okay, so the whip that I started after Union Forever is Feliz Navidad. I had, every time I saw this sampler online, it just caught my eye, and so I knew I had to do it. So I bought the chart, and there it sat, because the colors of this sampler are so beautiful that I really wanted to do them justice, but you know that as a rule, I don't do fancy floss. So I finally realized the other day that you can't really see a lot of the variegation within the letters. So I pulled the DMC, they were beautiful, and I wanted to start it. Now I am making some changes so that it fits into a standard frame. And basically what I discovered was if I take out exactly one repeat of the border, so it'll be like that tall, it'll fit perfectly into a 9 or a 10 by 13 frame. But I wanted this out all year round. And not that you couldn't keep it out all year round as it was, but if I was taking out, I think it came to be like 30 rows, then I decided I was not going to stitch the Merry Christmas, and I was not going to stitch this row here. And as I was looking closer at the original, lo and behold, basically what I had done was taken this piece back to the original, because there is no row that says Merry Christmas, and there is no row of that greenery. So let me show you what I've done thus far. So we're getting there, probably a little less than halfway. I had to make a couple of changes with the colors, because I don't know if you can tell, but the letter C is in a very pale color that it showed up fine on my fabric when I was stitching it, but at some point I held it up and I asked Eldest a question, and she said, well, where's the C? And I said, what do you mean? It's right there. And she said, I can't see it. So she wasn't all that far away. Like, I was on the chair and she was across the room on the couch. So that gave me pause, because I've known from day one that this is going to be an entry in the fair this fall. And when you enter pieces into a fair, the people who are at the fair are not close to them. They're probably 10 to 12 feet away from where they're displayed. So I wanted people to be able to see the letters. So what I went ahead and did was I made the C and all of the other letters that were supposed to be that cream color, and I just used a dark green, because that dark green was only going to be used like down here. And so I figured if I brought it up here, then it would be used throughout the pattern, since, don't forget, there's not going to be any green there because I'm not doing that row. So far so good. I'm really enjoying it. Again, these colors are just delicious.
So stitching on that piece, she stole my cherry needle minder.
I did steal her needle minder.
It looked good with the red though. So.
Yes, yeah. So as she mentioned, I made some project bags, and so I wanted to make project bags for my friends and I. We are going to be starting His Eye is on the Sparrow, as I mentioned in a prior video. We're going to start it sometime this summer. And we have another friend who's joining us, so that means there's 4 of us now, which really excites me. So I wanted to make project bags for all of us who were doing that. And so I made one as a prototype. I had never made the large bags before to fit the 11 by 11 Q-snaps. And there's so much fabric involved in His Eye is on the Sparrow that I knew we'd need big bags. So this was my prototype. It is Blackbird Designs fabric, and it's got the sampler print inside. And so I figured it's perfect for me to use for Feliz Navidad, which is a Blackbird design. So that was the prototype, and then I made 3 more. Again, they all have the Blackbird Designs fabric. This is blue, and then this is green. Yeah, you can tell the difference. And then they all have the sampler fabric on the inside, just in different colors. So we will all have matching project bags. If I'm feeling really ambitious, I may stitch us some matching needle minders from one of the motifs in the chart, but I don't know if I'll have time for that. So, okay, project bags done. Plans. So, once Feliz Navidad is done, I am hoping to start a stitch along with Elizabeth from Vintage Stitches. She had a Christmas book that she was showing, and there were 2 patterns that I had already planned to do. Now, mine are not from the same book. They're in 2 different magazines. This one is Cross Stitch Christmas, October 2001. And then this one is Cross Stitch Christmas, October 2000. So they're in the magazines, but Elizabeth also showed her book that they're in. So I don't know which one we're doing yet. I'm waiting to hear back from her to see which one. I know she has fabric for this one. We were going to see if she could find fabric for this one. So one of these is next up on my list. So if you are interested in joining us, yeah, keep your eye out. We'll let you know once we have a definite decision on which project we're going to do and when we're going to start it. Probably soon, I hope. What's your plans after you're done your Western historical? Are you going to work on your sampler again?
Yep, I'm going to work on my sampler. And then I'm going to work on the piece that I designed.
Oh, yes. For those of you who are new, she designed her very own chart that is kind of impressive, if I do say so myself. So she'll be working on that pretty soon. Mm-hmm. You want to talk about your embroidery club?
So the teacher who had allowed us to stay inside came up to us one day and was like, you can't be in our classroom. They haven't allowed students to come in. And then she thought for a moment and said, but if you make a club, that will work. So we were just so excited to have a club. There's 5 of us now, counting me. And one of them, named Eliana, finished her first pattern. It's a little snippet from the trilogy's Out of the Box. I had one of my friends do it, and they said it was a good piece to start on. So These aren't the real colors, but she said she wanted those colors, so we got her them.
So good job, Eliana. They've also started watching FLOSSTUBE at lunch and recess when they're meeting with their club.
Yeah.
So
they usually insist on watching us.
All right. The last thing I want to talk about is the continuation of my quilt series. Most of you new subscribers probably found me as a result of my 1,000 subscriber giveaway, which was quilt patterns to match the Little House series. So I wanted to show you how they look together. This is the Little House barn. This is one of the roosters from the Prairie Schooler that everyone's doing. And these are two patterns. Can you hold that one up? These are two patterns from my giveaway. This one is the Missouri Star, and this is the Hens and Chicks. And you can get an idea of how they look together. Pretty matchy-matchy. So, you hold these. This week, I have 4 more patterns for you, which will be linked below. As soon as I upload this, I will link them. So I wanted to show you the 2 that I've stitched up and talk to you about them, and then tell you about the other 2 that I didn't have a chance to stitch up yet. But you can see, I think they look really, really, really cute together. The whole series is going to be darling. And like I said, the quilt block that Little House has designed has like a little viney border around it, and so I'm going to be adding that to all of these quilts once that comes out. So this quilt right here, I am calling Vanna's quilt, because when I sat down to kind of design up some of these quilts, I knew I wanted to make it a tribute to the FLOSSTUBE community, and it almost seemed sacrilegious to me to do a tribute to FLOSSTUBE without somehow including Vanna. I think she's one of the, inevitably, people new to FLOSSTUBE say, I found Vanna as one of the first FLOSSTUBers. So I will admit to Instagram stalking, because I know that Vanna is getting into quilting, and she has shown us her strip quilt that she made. But I didn't think that that strip quilt would translate nicely to a cross-stitch design, especially since I only have like 4 or 5 colors to work with. So I went on Vanna's Instagram, and I found a post a while back of one of her cats in a cupboard. And the door of the cupboard is open, and on the open door is draped a bow tie quilt. And so that is the reason I decided to do this bow tie design. So this is Vanna's quilt. And then one of the other FLOSSTUBers who I really wanted to honor with a pattern is Lori from Mischievous Stitchers, because again, she's one of the first FLOSSTUBers that I found, and I have come to love her dearly. And so I again did some Instagram stalking, and I found a post where she put a picture of her very first quilt project, and it was a heart with a border on it. And I had to take some liberties because it wasn't going to be easy to chart her exact pattern using the same number of blocks that I have available. These are all 37 blocks tall and wide. So I took a few liberties, and I made this as a tribute to Lori, and I just thought it was so applicable because not only is this a quilt that she has made, but I have no words. Lori, I am sending you love. You know that. I think a lot of us in the community are sending Lori lots of love. And so this is Lori's quilt. And so those are the two that I have stitched up so far. There's also two more that I haven't gotten to. One of them is a pine tree block.